When your adult child starts pulling away, the first thought is, what did I do wrong? That's a question, right? It sits in your chest and it hurts. But what if that distance isn't about a failure of love at all? What if it's actually a vital part of them becoming who they're meant to be? In this explainer, we're going to dive into the unspoken truth behind why adult children pull away, and more importantly, how you can navigate this really tough time and build a new, stronger connection on the other side.
So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to talk about that initial pain when a child pulls away. Then, we'll look at what's really changing in their world and in your relationship. After that, we'll get to the core idea. The distance is often just boundary work. Then we get practical. We'll cover 3 shifts you can make to start reconnecting, get some perspective for the long haul, and we'll wrap up with a gentle, reflective challenge just for you.
All right, let's start right there, in that really tough place. You know the feeling. The texts that go unanswered for a little too long, the plans that get canceled, that growing sense of a gap where there used to be closeness. It's a moment that is just filled with the sharp, heavy pain of self-blame.
And you know what? That reaction is so normal. I mean, for decades, your main job was to be involved, to guide, to protect. So when that connection frays, your brain's first move is to scan for what you did wrong. It feels deeply personal, like a bad review of your parenting. That feeling is real, it's valid, but it's rarely the whole story.
But here's where we get a totally different way to look at this. The surprising truth is that this pulling away often isn't a vote on how much they love you. It's actually driven by a powerful psychological need to separate, to become their own person. Think about it. It's a developmental stage, just like learning to walk or talk, but it happens so much later in life, and frankly, it can be a lot more painful for the parent.
So to really get this, we have to look at their world, right? What's really going on in their lives that's creating this need for space? Because it's not just happening in a vacuum. It's about the world they are trying to build for themselves.
I mean, think about the sheer pressure your adult child is probably under. They're trying to build a career, maybe manage their own family, deal with financial stress, that's no joke. And their time? It's not endless. It's a resource that's stretched incredibly thin. This isn't an excuse, it's just the reality of them being the captain of their own very busy ship.
And this right here is really the heart of the issue. For years, the relationship was pretty hierarchical. You were the manager. It made sense. But now, they're an adult, and that structure just doesn't work anymore. The relationship has to shift to being lateral, equal. The new role isn't manager, it's advisor. And what does an advisor do? They wait to be asked. Their guidance is requested, not pushed. The real friction starts when we're still trying to manage, when they desperately need us to just be an advisor. And here's the kicker. Even the most loving, well-intentioned advice, when it's not asked for, can feel like criticism. To an adult trying to prove to themselves and the world that they can do it, it can sound like, you're not getting this right. And to protect their own growing sense of independence, sometimes the only tool they feel they have is distance. It's their way of saying, please, just let me try.
Okay, so this next idea, it's probably the most important thing we'll talk about. We have to learn to see this distance, not as rejection, but through a new lens. We need to see it as boundary work. They are literally trying to redraw the map of your relationship.
So what is boundary work? Well, it's their often clumsy attempt to change the relationship's foundation. They're trying to move it away from that old parent-child dependency and toward a new model, one based on mutual, adult-to-adult respect. They want to be your equal, and sometimes creating space is the only way they know how to start that conversation. So what's driving all this? Why do they need to do this boundary work so badly? It usually comes down to 2 really powerful psychological needs. First, they need to feel competent. They need to prove to themselves that they can handle their own life, their own mistakes, their own successes. And second, there's a real fear of what psychologists call enmeshment, that fear of being so tangled up with a parent's life and emotions that they can't figure out who they are on their own.
And this is what they're hearing, even if it's not what you're saying. When a parent is constantly offering advice or jumping in to fix things, the unspoken message can be deafening. They don't hear, I love you and I want to help. They hear, I don't trust you to make good decisions. And wow, that can really undermine the very confidence they're trying so hard to build.
So you see, from their point of view, creating that distance isn't some mean-spirited act of rebellion. It's an act of self-preservation. It's them putting on their own oxygen masks so they can breathe, so they can think their own thoughts and feel their own feelings. It's a painful but often necessary step for them to be the whole, complete person you raised them to be.
All right, so that's the why behind it all. But the big question is, what do you do? How do you actually start to bridge this gap? Well, the answer isn't to chase them down or demand more time. It's about making a few gentle shifts inside yourself that completely change the dynamic and invite them to come closer. Let's look at 3 really practical steps.
Okay, first up, this one sounds simple, but wow, it takes some practice. It's all about changing the way you communicate.
Let's call this the ask first rule. It's exactly what it sounds like. You make a conscious pact with yourself to not offer any advice, any suggestions, any helpful ideas unless they explicitly ask for it. Unless you hear the words, "Mom, Dad, what do you think?" This one little change is so powerful because it sends a crystal clear message. I trust you, I believe in you, I'm here if you need me, but I know you've got this.
Number 2, this one is all about you. It's about turning your focus inward and pouring energy back into your own life. When your own life is full of hobbies you love, friendships that nourish you, things you're excited about, a couple of amazing things happen. First, you just become a more interesting person to talk to. But more importantly, it takes the pressure off your child to be your primary source of happiness. When they don't feel like they're responsible for your fulfillment, interacting with you feels less like an obligation and a whole lot more like a joy.
And finally, number 3, this shift can completely transform the quality of your conversations. It's about listening in a brand new way. You know, as parents, we're wired to fix things, right? We hear a problem, and our brain immediately starts searching for a solution. Active, non-judgmental listening is the opposite of that. It's listening just to understand. It's swapping out, "well, you should," for, "wow, that sounds really hard. Tell me more about that." When your child feels truly heard and understood by you, without judgment, conversations with you become a safe place, a place they actually want to be.
Look, I know this stuff is not easy. It takes time, it takes patience, and it requires you to really focus on the big picture. So let's just zoom out for a second and get some perspective for the long game. This isn't about a quick fix, it's about building a foundation for the future.
If there's one thing I really want you to take to heart, it's this. This period of distance, as painful as it feels right now, is very often not the end. For so many families, it's actually a necessary bridge. It's messy and it's uncomfortable, for sure. But it's the recalibration that has to happen to allow a new, more mature and stronger relationship to grow on the other side.
It's a funny paradox, isn't it? Giving them the very space they seem to be demanding is what actually creates the opportunity for real closeness. By taking a respectful step back, you're not losing them. You're giving them the room to turn around and choose to step towards you freely. And that creates a bond built not on childhood obligation, but on genuine adult respect and affection.
Okay, we've gone through a lot here, from the pain of that initial pullback to the psychology behind it and some real practical steps you can take. So let's bring it all home with one final thought and a little challenge. Because real change, it almost always starts with one small, quiet step.
If you only remember one sentence from our time together, I hope it's this one. Just let it sink in for a second. The distance you're feeling, it's not a report card on your love or your parenting. It's the cost of entry for their healthy, independent adulthood. It's a sign that you raised someone strong enough to try and stand on their own 2 feet. And even though it's hard, that is a success.
So I want to leave you with a gentle challenge. This isn't about confronting anyone or having some big dramatic talk. This is just for you. Sometime this week, take a quiet moment and do a little communication audit. Just think back to your last 3 conversations with your child and be really honest, but also really kind to yourself. Can you remember any moments where you offered advice they didn't ask for, or a tiny suggestion, or even a small critique that was disguised as help? Don't judge it, just notice it.
Just doing that quiet act of self-reflection, is the most powerful first step you can possibly take. It reminds us that this whole struggle is so often rooted in their deep, valid need for autonomy and respect. It brings us back to that core idea, replacing our instinct to advise with a genuine desire to listen, all while we build a full and happy life of our own. And please, hold on to this one last thought. By respecting these new boundaries, you are not losing your child. You are building the foundation for a stronger bond that can last a lifetime. You're planting the seeds for a future where they don't just feel obligated to you, they genuinely choose you.